What up, guys? Welcome to another Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a idea that was based on a conversation I had with some of the young guys or some young guys at the Jiu-Jitsu Open that just happened this past weekend at the time of recording this. And in that conversation, I sort of brought up an idea, and this is an idea I've talked about on the channel, on the YouTube channel, and on the podcast before, and through my emails. But it's something I think is super important, and so if I share it in a different way and it really connects to you today, then good. And it's also one of those things where it's an idea that you can understand it, and it is a whole different ball game of actually executing it and really practicing it. Right, this is a lot of times with like mindset stuff. We can read a quote, we can see a book about it or whatever, and we go, yeah, that makes complete sense, right? But until you have like a visceral experience with it, something that you actually had to go through and you had a chance to practice with it, I don't really think it means much. It's the same thing of like learning a technique, like doing the movements and sort of like, okay, cool. I was able to mimic my coach and do this thing very passively, opposed to actually, failing with it, messing up, whatever, and eventually executing it on someone in live conditions. Those are two different things, right? You kind of have the knowledge that it's there, but you don't have an understanding of how it all works. And so I think sometimes with like the mindset stuff, there's been a lot of lessons in jiu-jitsu that I've learned that have sort of translated on off the mats, right? And this is something that basically I take to everything from business to life to everything to relationships. But again, it's one of those things where you definitely have to practice with it because as you'll hear, as you'll understand very soon, it's difficult. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoy the podcast today. And as we get into it, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. If you guys have never checked them out, or if you've never tried CBD, I encourage you to give it a whirl. I like their products. They have everything from tinctures and balms and gummies and all that different stuff. Most recently, I posted a picture of me on Instagram. So we're doing like a takedown / standing focus on our gym for the next few weeks to a month to really hone in on that. That was one of the weaknesses of our competition, which I figured it would be. We hadn't given it a whole lot of love because we've been diving into so many other areas in the ground. And so we're going to be focused on standing work and all this stuff for the next few weeks. And when whenever I start battling for takedowns a little bit, especially takedowns, my neck sometimes gets a little sore. The muscles around my neck and they just get yanked on a little bit, especially at the beginning when maybe I haven't been hand fighting as hard for those takedowns as much because we've been on the ground. And so the CBD medic balm, I really like that. They have both like the actual like cream type stuff, or they have a stick that you can rub on it. So I had my wife come in there and basically rub it up and down my neck, and it's pretty damn good. Again, it's a great product. And so I encourage you guys to check out any of their stuff, whether it's the stick for pain relief on certain parts of your body where your muscles and stuff get like yanked on from jiu-jitsu, which happens like every day, to the tinctures and stuff. And again, if you find something you like, check out or use the promo code at checkout, Chewjitsu20, for 20% off the order, and try some CBD. Also, thanks to Epic Roll for their support. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you guys have never been on their website, I encourage you to go check it out. I like everything that they put out. Well, I don't want to say everything. I mean, they haven't put out anything I don't like, but I like their stuff. And almost everything that I've come into contact with, I like. I like the quality of it. I like the designs that he puts out. And again, this is one of the reasons why I've partnered up with Matt before with our gis and rash guards, or not gis and rash guards, but rash guards and shorts. And we're going to be doing that again here in the near future. I like the fit of the rash guards. I like the way they feel. I love the shorts. It's pretty much, if you watch any of my videos, it's almost what I wear in every single training session. And so again, if you guys have not checked out any of their stuff, go to their website at epicrollbjj.com, browse through it, check out some of the t-shirts. He's got a lot of cool t-shirts, great gis, good rash guards and shorts. I love the shorts. They don't have Velcro on them. I mean, he does have Velcroed shorts, but again, if you're going to get some of the shorts, you need to get the non-Velcro shorts. And again, if you find anything you like, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off the order at checkout. Also, if you want to support the podcast directly and get access to an exclusive library of content, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. One of the new pieces of content that we've uploaded just recently is getting into the ideas that we got from people who competed at the competition. So we asked some of the black belts and brown belts and stuff like that competed this past weekend, and some of them I knew for a fact, because they're, my students or my training partners, I knew that they were hitting certain techniques that they had been working on, right? These were new techniques that they had unveiled, or in some cases, it was techniques that they've been hitting a ton in competition recently. And so I wanted to ask them, like, okay, like what is your strategy? What is the thing that seems to help you make that happen? Because again, at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do, right? We want to be able to take a technique, learn it, be able to have some process for implementing it, and then being able to use it against someone. And so we've got the sort of the blueprint on that from both black belts, in gi and no gi, and brown belts and stuff like that. And so again, these are also guys who, to me, are a little bit more, I don't want to say like replicatable, but these are guys that are like dudes in the gym. They're not necessarily out of reach like some random, 7-time world champion that basically can do whatever the hell they want to because they're just that damn good. These are like regular guys that are training in the gym that are very, very good, but they're also regular guys, right? They still have day jobs and stuff like that. And so how do they do it? Well, you can get access to that video and that content at our patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And also, guys, if you want to get my daily email that I send out, my daily Chew Crew email, and also get access to a few free ebooks that go into everything from building a game plan for your jiu-jitsu to drilling strategies to break through jiu-jitsu plateaus. So if you're stuck in a plateau and you're like not being able to, you don't feel like you're getting any better, there are strategies to break through that I find work pretty damn well and pretty consistently at that for that matter. And you can get access to those ebooks at my website, jiujitsu.net/join, JOIN. And upon joining, you'll get access to the ebooks and you'll get my daily email, which goes into everything from philosophical ramblings to the books that I'm reading to training tips and ideas, supplements. I mean, the whole thing, you name it, it'll be in there. And check that out. So with that said, guys, let's jump into this podcast. So here's what happened. This past weekend at the Jiu-Jitsu Open, at the start of the rules meeting, I was basically talking to everybody. I had like a little spiel that I did before my black belt Jeff took over, because Jeff was really running the thing, and he did an amazing job for what we were working with, for the conditions we had. He ran a good, smooth tournament, and we had a lot of compliments from people. Again, it was a challenging environment with as many people that were there, but we still ran a smooth tournament, and I think it worked out pretty good. But anyway, at the start of that tournament, I told everybody, thank you so much for being here. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you guys, because I never really set an expectation for the tournament. I had a number that would have been like sort of the bare minimum to make the tournament financially viable. Like, hey, we should do this again kind of thing, right? We blew past that number. But these people that came in, like, again, I put out the word. I was just like, let's see what happens. And I didn't know where it was going to go. Like, I remember it was, we were sort of flying by the seat of our pants because, we had this idea, and then Jeff got the website up on the Smooth Comp. Then I just started sending out stuff. Let's see if we can get someone to register. And Jeff sent me the message, and he's like, bro, we just registered 20 people like the first like couple hours or something.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, oh, okay. Like maybe there's something there, but again, I didn't get too attached to it, but it ended up, we had a lot of competitors. We actually had to close down the registration a week early because we reached our max capacity. People were calling the gym all week long. We had people show up the day of, and in some cases, I think they pulled a couple strings for some people who, had driven like 7 or 8 hours or something crazy.
Oh, wow.
But so you're just like, all right, man, just, you drove this long. We're not going to send you back home with, no chance to do it. But the tournament worked out well. But anyway, at the end of the day, towards the end, I was talking to these 3 dudes from Chicago, some young guys, and we were talking about all kinds of stuff. Everything from like meditation to, training and everything else. And one of them asked me, he said, man, he goes, Chewy, how did you not expect this tournament to be a success? He's like, man, you have like 3 bazillion followers or whatever. How did you not expect this thing to work out? And I told him, I was like, I don't set expectations, not for outcomes, right? I set expectations for what I'm supposed to do and the processes and the things that I have to put into it and the things that are within my control. But I never set expectations anymore about the outcome of how it's supposed to be. because I think it leads to a dangerous place. I think it's a dangerous belief to hold when you start basically making yourself believe that something is supposed to end in a particular fashion. So for instance, this is a lesson I know I 100% got from jiu-jitsu. Obviously you could get this from other places. This is not anything, revolutionary. This is stuff they talk about in everything from, you can read in the Tao Te Ching, you can see it in the Stoic philosophies. It's all there. But again, lessons sometimes, to me, you only really understand them on a deep level when you have an experience with them. That's when you have that deep visceral sort of understanding where it has a different meaning, right? It's like, again, as I said before at the beginning of the podcast, it's the difference between knowing how to grab an arm bar, twist your hips and whatever else, and knowing how to hit that sucker during a full roll, right? And so when I used to compete, and I used to do this a bit when I started rolling in the beginning too, I would have, but it was really bad when I was competing, I would set these expectations that I was supposed to win, that I'm supposed to get out there and do this thing, and I'm supposed to get my hand raised and get the gold medal and yada, 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 so on. And what happened is that created a lot of fear, because I was competing scared because I had something to lose. Granted, I had nothing to lose. I hadn't won anything, but I wasn't able to pull the trigger, because what would happen is when I would have these opportunities, I would start what-ifing myself. I want to go for this, but what if he does this? And then you lose the match or whatever, right? Instead of going after the person. And over the years, I come to realize that, one, I'm going to lose some and I'm going to win some. There's just no way around that, right? And when I lose them, nobody really cares. It doesn't change that much. And if I win a tournament or win a match, it's basically like, great, I won one, but I want to win more, and I'm going to want another one, right? So at the end of the day, like, there's not an end to it. If I lose, I learn something, and it'll give me a fire to go train harder and make myself better. And people still like me, it's fine. And if I win, then great, I won. I can sort of see what I did well, and then I can keep going from there. And I noticed that there was a big change in me. And this was at black belt, by the way. So this is something I dealt with for a long time. This is not something that, like, oh, I just got over this when I was a white belt and sort of changed my mindset. Because again, at the end of the day, we're all trying to climb up that ladder, and we're all trying to prove ourselves. And I think in a deep sense, to ourselves. And so, but it was at black belt where I became sort of distant from that feeling. And I remember, like, I think it was actually in like 2000 and what year would I would say? I would probably say that happened in 2000 and like in the late 2000 teens, like 2016, 17.
Mhm.
That was when I was just like, all right, man, I'm just going out there and doing this damn thing. I don't even care anymore. Like, let's go. Because at the end of the day, what I realized when I looked at all these different experiences and matches is there were some matches that I had lost or that I had won, and I was disgusted with myself for the way I won, because I would win on an advantage and I had ample opportunities to attack, but I didn't attack them. And therefore, in my mind, I was not developing the virtue of courage because I was afraid, right? And then I had lost matches where I was very proud of the matches, because I was like, I went after those dudes, and I didn't give two craps about whether or not it was going to win or lose. I was just trying to win. And I also noticed that when I did not care about winning was typically when I performed my best technically. It's when I was the most aggressive, when I was the most technical, and I looked good. And so early on, that dangerous belief that I held about that I had to win, or that I was supposed to win, that expectation sort of made me one of those people that was good in the gym, not as good in competition. When I lost that and would basically allowed myself to just let go and just go after it, I became one of those people where I was better. I was good in the gym, but I was better in competition, right? And you would, I think you would attest to this. I'm a different person in a competition, and I'm better. I just am, right? And so that's the deal, right? Now, again, I learned that in jiu-jitsu, but it's something I take over to everything. And this is true if it comes down to, like, say, like, for instance, with podcasts and videos, content that I put out for the business. When we do these things, I don't really care about how many views it gets. I don't care about how much, if it's viral or not. That's not the point. The point is that I'm making it because it's what I want to do. And then I also sort of make sure that I put a good effort into trying to help someone out, trying to share an idea that I think could be useful to someone. That's all that I can do, right? That's my expectation. That's what I need to do. In relationships, right? This is something where, like, let's say, for instance, if you're on a date, I remember the difference when I got a little bit older and a little bit more secure in myself. When I was younger, there would be issues where I wanted the person to have a second date with me, and I was worried about that. And then again, it was one of those things where that created a fear because I'm like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I sound
Mhm.
stupid or whatever? And again, instead of being able to be relaxed and charismatic, you're too locked up. And again, you can go through the gamut. It's a beautiful lesson to learn wherever you learn it. And again, it's one thing where you can understand this idea because obviously we understand this, right? We got to be focused in the present, being in the moment, being focused on the process rather than the outcome. But again, we have to a lot of times check ourselves because we forget about that when it's actually happening, right? It's easy to say, take a deep breath and be relaxed. And, when you're stressed, but then when you're stressed, it's very easy to be overwhelmed. And so it's just an idea to chew on, but that's something that was useful to me. Again, it got it from jiu-jitsu and it's taken over to everything else, including this tournament where when I got into it, I set no expectation of how many people were supposed to come. I didn't want to get let down because I said, hey, we're going to have this many competitors. I just wanted to focus on creating a tournament that I would enjoy, that my students would enjoy, and that other people would enjoy. And I think the way that we set it up, created that environment. It worked out great.
What would you say, is there an event or a series of events that maybe occurred that you started to make that transition? Because sometimes it's like, yeah, we hear it and it makes sense, but like implementing it is totally a different animal. So like, is there, in your opinion, and I think I have some ideas possibly for me personally how I can work on these things, but like for you, as far as specifically tournaments, jujitsu, whatever it is, what do you think? Is there like a series of events or moments that really stood out to you that you started to make that transition?
Depends. So there was multiples, right? So a lot of them were I could look back when I was younger, and there would be these matches where I wouldn't care about the outcome because I would basically, I was almost like I have lost already. Like there was times where I was a white belt and I competed against a purple belt, and I was expecting that. I was like, I'm going to lose, right? This guy's going to kill me, and because I didn't really care about winning, I went after that dude and I won the damn match. It
Mhm.
was like, wow, that was crazy. And then I remember there were some of my early black belt matches where the person would sweep me and get ahead on points and put me in a bad position, which then in turn was like I was losing. So then I had to go. And what was funny is a lot of those matches where I was down on points early and couldn't think about winning anymore and just had to go. Those ended up being some of my best matches. I rallied back and won some of my best matches back then. And I rallied back and would win, right? And so it was like, how do you capture that mindset of basically almost like losing in the beginning, like just go after someone and stop? Because when I would start going, it was like, man, it was like a different person.
Mhm.
And then I would say one of the useful things, this was a little bit later on that really sort of helped cement it. Again, was doing some meditation practices. And I remember I've spoken about this story before. There was a particular type of meditation that I was doing. I was actually talking to some of the guys about it, those guys from Chicago about it, where you'd start off, and the beginning of it starts off with where you actually just you stand in place and you essentially just shake. You bounce up and down, you shake, and you do this for like 15 minutes. It's a long time, right? And then for another 15 minutes afterwards, you just stand in place and you do not move. Just sit still. Don't do anything. And I remember during that particular one of those sessions that I was doing, I had started to sweat, and this little droplet of sweat came down and it sat right in that little crevice on the outside of your nose, like that little, like right where the outside of your nose is for the people that are listening and not watching. That little outside of your nose, right there on the outside, that little crevice, and it got stuck there, and it was itching. Like, I mean, bros, like, and if you've ever had an itch, of course you've had an itch, but if you've ever had an itch and you chose not to scratch it, it will irritate the crap out of you. I remember this is like kind of weird, but sometimes when I do a sauna, I will not allow myself to wipe sweat off my face. Be like, I'm in control. Now it sounds crazy,
Yep.
and it sounds almost so stupid, right? It sounds dumb, but it's so crazy because when you're sitting there and that sweat's going down, every ounce of your body wants to just wipe it off. It wants to scratch it. It's like going crazy, right? It's just this crazy thing. But then if you just let it go, eventually it goes away. The feeling goes away.
Mhm.
And so that became analogous to sometimes with my emotions. Now, again, I'm not perfect. Sometimes my emotions or my stress still get the head of me, But the key is that I got better at recognizing it, right? And so that's the key. So a lot of times I would view it as that itch. Once I notice that I'm being emotional, because sometimes the emotions get the best of me, or once I know that I'm being stressed or whatever it might be, once I notice it, I try to think of it as the itch. If I don't really give it much thought or much attention or much focus,
Mhm.
it kind of goes away. And so it was the same thing with the tournament. I was at the tournament, and I remember this was following one of those sessions. I'm sitting there and I'm looking around, I'm getting nervous, and I'm like, hold on a second. Hold on a second. And then you're kind of going through this conversation and like, let's screw this. Let's just go after it and win it. I'm not going to choose to give that I'm not going to choose to scratch that itch anymore.
Mhm.
And so that was very useful to me, because then it's like you start looking at things and you're like, I don't really want to do this. I don't want to dive into this anymore. I don't want to give into this feeling. So I'm not going to. So, and again, that again is a practice. You get better with it, and you have to get better at catching yourself, because that's really the awareness part's important. I think if meditation, if you get, if screw the being mindless stuff, right? Because I mean, like, a lot of people go into meditation, they think they have to like not think of anything. Screw that. To me, like, one of the best things for meditation is basically catching yourself and just seeing what's going on and having some separation from what you're thinking and who you are, and being able to like have that distance, so that when things are happening to you, instead of getting wrapped up in them, you can just kind of look at them thinking to yourself, I'm kind of angry at my spouse about this, that, or whatever. Do I want to be angry? Or I'm angry at my kids about this. Do I want to be angry? Or I'm stressed out about the X, Y, or Z. Is X, Y, or Z really worth being stressed about? Can I do anything about it? You start to play around with it in that space, and it's useful.
Yeah, I think part of it is exposure. So like expose yourself. So if you're trying to get better at a tournament environment, a jiu-jitsu tournament, then you got to do tournaments more often. You start feeling certain things, and you're used to being there. And then you can start playing around with this like expectations, or like, I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing today. I'm not going to
Right.
worry about, what's going to happen, the outcome. And that takes, because a lot of times if you're doing tournaments, you probably have some nerves. Most people have nerves. That's something I asked one of the guys that won our black belt division at the tournament. I asked him, like, do you get nerves? And he had an interesting answer, and
Mm-hmm.
he answered it because of certain things that he's done to make it that way, to make himself more comfortable. So, but yeah, like I think being there more often, then you can start playing around with certain stuff. You can start being like, all right, I've
Mm-hmm.
been here before. Let me see what I can focus on, or how I can make myself more relaxed, more comfortable. Um, and then yeah, like even like with the kids stuff, do I want to be angry? And a lot of times what I will do, and I'm like, I'll go with my wife if the kids are just driving me nuts. I'll go, I need some space. Like, give me 5-10 minutes. And what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing is like focusing on my breath and just thinking about what's going on. Like, do I want to be angry? Do I want to react this way? What can I do? And I think the big thing is knowing what you have control of and what you don't. I think it really comes down to that. If you just kind of cut a line, and it's just either you have control over it or you don't. And there's some peace that comes with knowing that like you've done everything you can, and this is what you are going to present to the situation, and the outcome's going to be what it is.
That's absolutely. And again, it's like you said, that exposure, because um, a lot of times when you get subjected to some sort of stress or some sort of tough situation, the first time it happens, let's do a, going back to jiu-jitsu real quick. The first time it happens, like you said, it's like deer in the headlights. Body doesn't know what to do. Your nervous system is going haywire, right? Think of the first time you ever did jiu-jitsu and you rolled. Your body is freaking the hell out, right? You're going crazy.
Absolutely.
You're going nuts, and you're exhausted. Even if you're in good shape, you're typically breathing heavy, or downright exhausted in like a couple minutes, because
Yeah.
your body doesn't know what's going on. And then later on, like when you've been training like me for 20 years, you're getting your head squeezed and you're just kind of like hanging out like, okay, they're squeezing my head. No big
Yep.
deal. Very relaxed.
Right.
And so 100%. So it's one of those things where that exposure to difficult stuff, and just because this is one thing too, just because you're really good about putting yourself in a headlock and being okay, doesn't mean that you can deal with, like, say, emotional stress, right? Because maybe you have trouble with certain conversations with people, right? That can be a thing. So you can have different types of stress. And if it's something that does stress you out, then you got to take that jiu-jitsu mindset to it, where it's like, let's go towards that. Right. And again, you can go into those things with, no expectation of how it's supposed to go. And again, that's another thing too. A lot of times let's say with meditation, people go into it with this expectation of how it's supposed to go, opposed to no. Meditation's not supposed to do anything. It's literally you sitting down and doing nothing, or you going for a walk and just being very aware of what's going on. You're not looking at your phone. You're looking at the birds go across. You're feeling the feet under the ground under your feet. You feel the wind blowing through your hands. You're trying to focus on all those senses at once, right? And just be 100% in that moment. Because again, that's something that's all it's really supposed to be. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. And you can think about when people come into jiu-jitsu or something like that, and they expect it to go a certain way. You know what I mean? And like I'm getting ready to start horse riding lessons with a new horse riding coach, right? And when I go in there, I have absolutely no expectation. I'm just like, I'm here. Show me what I'm supposed to do. And I expect that, it's not, my expectation is typically, if I do set an expectation, it's usually low, because I basically say, here's what's going to actually happen. So if anything better happens, I'm in a better place. If anything else, I set a lower expectation for myself, not because I want to hit a low bar. It's like I set a low expectation, but I train my butt off, or I set a low expectation and I work my butt off, right? I put in as much work as I possibly can, but I set the bar low so that I'm ready for the worst to happen. And so again, I do the best that I can. What do they say? You train, you prepare for the best, but you expect the worst, that kind of thing, so that kind of idea.
Well, I think if you think of a couple things like stress inoculation, essentially your stressful environment becomes your norm, becomes your comfort. So you're good there. Number one, you've been there before. It's like, you say that to people all the time. If they're doing a tournament, you're coaching them. You've been here before. You've been in the situation. You understand, and it kind of gives you like, oh, okay, I got this. I know what to do. The other thing is that your bandwidth, right? You only have so much bandwidth. So only so much stuff can be going in your and out of your head at once. And if you're focused on at a tournament, for example, on what you are able to do and your game plan, and you're not worried about winning or losing, you're going to play your game more likely. You're not going to be worried about distracted. What if this happens? You're going to say, all right, I got to do this to get the submission. That's it. And I think that those are valuable things to think about, but also can you implement them? And I think a lot of that stress inoculation, if whatever you want to call it, just exposure to the environment is what you need to be able to do. I think that's just very, very important.
It's difficult though, because a lot of times, because it is stressful to us, it's very difficult. This is one of the reasons why, in the first few tournaments for students, I don't really put an expectation. I mean, granted, I don't ever really put an expectation on them necessarily. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, this white belt's really, really good, or this blue belt's really good. In my mind, I'm like, I think they're probably going to do well. If they don't do well, it's fine, whatever. But I have a hunch they might do well, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I never said anything. I'm like, I don't know how they're going to do. Who knows? Because that stress is so different, when the people compete, and it can throw people for a loop. And so I even tell them in the beginning, someone will say, I had several guys come to the Jiu-Jitsu Open, and it was their first competition. Our students, and then people came from out of town, and some of them were asking me, hey, Chewy, I watch your videos, love your videos. You got any last minute advice? And my advice to them was just go out and do the damn thing. And they looked at me like, they're expecting some sort of let's go kill it. And did it. I'm like, no, just do it. Because when you think about this, so few people do things. They talk about things. They, will sort of play around with the idea of doing those things. But then when it comes time to actually doing the thing, it's like, okay, well, where you at? It's like, and this can be jiu-jitsu, of course. This can be competitions. I know plenty of people who, I want to compete. Oh, I can't compete because of X, Y, or Z. And sometimes there's legitimate excuses, of course.
Right.
But this also translates to everything else. I know people who want to I want to do this for the business, or I want to write this book, or I want to do this thing. And again, it's like, you got to go do that now. And again, the doing is the important part. And when it really boils down to, and again, when you do it, you just focus on the doing rather than where it's going. It's we're not worried about where this is going. We're just doing the thing right now, because that's what's important. Because again, the doing is the most important aspect of it. Whether it's jiu-jitsu and you're trying to get better, you got to go train. If you're trying to, like write something, well, you got to just sit down and just write. I mean, you got to do that. Or if you're trying to build your business, you find some aspect of that business that you can build up and you just simply do it on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, it's all theory essentially before you kind of put your pen to paper or do the thing. I mean, it essentially is all it's all okay. Like I have this idea, how am I going to implement it? And you just have to kind of do it. So and that kind of leads into the tournament, right? Had this idea, right,
Mhm.
for this tournament. You're like, it's going to be whatever. It's going to be kind of a small thing, and we've talked about the rule set and things like that, and not really expectations, just getting a kind of a baseline. What do you think? What's your overall thoughts on the tournament as far as like it's done over with? There
Mhm.
was a lot of work, a lot of prep, a lot of setup, which is one thing I think you guys did amazing at, which made the gym, made the tournament kind of go so well. There's a flow to everything. So, what do you think? What was your kind of results or your thoughts on it?
I mean, the most difficult challenge to that particular weekend was the fact that it was hot.
It was
Like
hot as shit.
the weekend before, and it looks like it's going to be the same way the weekend after are beautiful. I mean, there are these nice warm days. They're not overly hot, right? Even the next day on Sunday, it was a beautiful sunny day, but it wasn't too hot. But the day before the tournament, we literally had one of our hottest days. Like the heat index was like 110, which again, that's not too bad if you're out in, say, like, I mean, it's still very hot, but if you're out in, like, say, California or like, Las Vegas or something, it'll be 90 degrees outside and it's not that bad. It feels kind of good, right? But 90 degrees here in Louisville, which is, we have that sort of southern humidity, it's different, right? It's
Yeah.
like 85 degrees with, like, some high percentage of humidity is rough. It's you can feel the air, and because of the fact that think about this, because the humidity is so high, the water moisture in the air is so high, water can't evaporate fast. This is why, let's say if you go to a place like, say, Arizona or Las Vegas, or even a hot day in certain parts of California, you can go around and you'll basically be sweating the whole time, but it evaporates so
Mhm.
fast, right? And so you don't necessarily notice it. And that you got to be careful. You need to drink a lot of water because
Right.
it can just drain out of you. Whereas when you go into the South and you go around there, you sweat just as much, but what happens is the sweat can't evaporate, right? The water can't evaporate because there's already too much water moisture in the air, and so you start turning bright red. You got your shirt is soaked as soon as you walk outside. And at the tournament, that was our biggest challenge because we had a heat wave moving in. So the damn thing was, it's like the hottest day we've had so far in the summer, the day before. And then the next day was super hot, not quite as hot, but still super hot. So the day before, Erica, she was, my black belt Jeff, his wife, she went and rented these big, giant fans with misters. And,
Yeah.
we're putting fans all over the place and everything else, but it worked out all right. It was a little hot for a bit, but it was okay. But beyond that, everything went pretty well. The format that we did was a round robin style with a sub only refs decision if you went to a time, and that's what we did. This way, everybody got lots of matches. Everybody got some matches, and looking back at it, I think that people really enjoyed that offering. That was an offer to them. It's like, hey, here's what we're offering, and instead of saying, hey, I'm just offering a tournament. No, no, no. I've got something else for you. You're going to get some matches. You're not going to come here. You're not going to spend the travel money, everything else, lose your first match, and then go home empty handed. Like, you might lose every single match in here today, but you're going to get some damn good experience for it. And again, to me, that's one of the most valuable things from a competition, like a regional competition, is getting that valuable experience where you get like reps. You get a chance to play around with your stuff in live conditions. And that's what we offered people. And I think that everybody enjoyed that. And, I'm sure there were people that did not enjoy the competition for one thing or another, because I mean, that's just people, right? You can't please everyone.
Mhm.
But I know that I spoke to a lot of people who were very complimentary of it. It was ran very smoothly. There were a couple times where some divisions had to get pushed back a little bit, but we were done by, I want to say, around, like, what was it, 5 o'clock or something. So considering how many mats we had, the amount of matches everybody got, the staff, I mean, 5 o'clock still wasn't bad. For me, to me, the way I look at it, man, is like when you go to a competition, you just book the whole damn day. Like, that's what we're doing. We're doing a competition.
Yep.
I'm not trying to do this and, like, I need to be out by 2 o'clock to go do. It's like, no, the whole day is the competition day. And then the people the black belts that I spoke to and the expert competitors that I spoke to, they were complimentive of it. And so when people who compete regularly tell me, hey, you did a good job, this was really well ran, I trust their opinions over, say, the white belt who had their very first competition and they're upset because their division got moved 30 minutes. I'm like, guess what? That happens to everybody. Get used to it. There's no tournament where, you go in and everything just, happens flawlessly. Even IBJJFs, which they do a lot of things that I don't necessarily care for. They run a pretty tight ship as far as the times go. Even they have issues with timing. Sometimes you just can't get around it.
Right.
And so beyond that, I think everything went really well, and I was really happy about it. And one thing too I liked about it is I talked to all the refs, and I don't think any of them really had to call stalling, right? Like they,
No.
there was a couple times where they had to intervene with illegal moves or whatever, but there was no stalling calls. Like, and I told them, I was like, we're going to be hard on stalling calls. I was like, if someone's back, like if they're doing this, like you're going to get put down on the ground, or you get a stalling call, and then you're going to start getting DQ'd, right? So whatever, like we're not going to deal with that.
Yeah.
Get after it. And we didn't have any stalling. And I was watching matches and people were getting after it. And again, I think it was because I was trying to help people tap into that feeling of you have nothing to lose. If you lose this match, you have another one waiting for you. So go get it, go after it. You know what I mean? And overall, I was really pleased with it. The staff did an amazing job. The guys like Jeff, who, him and his wife were the primary people organizing it and running it. Yep. It was my idea and the format was my idea, but they were the ones that really put it together. And so I think it went off without a hitch.
Yeah. To second that, I was kind of doing a little bit with the podcast, but then we needed a ref. So I got to go ref. It was the no points. It was because we had some of the younger kids had points and stuff like that. And some of the teams had points.
It was up till about, I think it was 8 years old. Then after that, we got into the sub only.
So I got to go out there and, it was like the adult white belt. I don't know, a couple different weight classes were going. So I was just reffing. And I mean, most of the matches ended in submission. I mean, I would say I maybe reffed, I don't know how many, 10, 15. I probably had to do 3 decisions. I didn't even thought about stalling. It never even popped in my head because I wasn't doing it. Everybody's going after it. And there was matches where I did a little coaching too. And there was matches where, people were just like going back and forth. And like they weren't really worried about positions important. And if you're trying to win by points, or by decision, it's important to an extent, but like you're like, oh man, I lost position. You still got a chance to win. If you're still aggressive and you get after it. And you did something interesting with the point system. So you had like groups of 4 or 5, but you did something interesting with the points. It wasn't just win-loss. It was like win by submission, win by decision, loss, and then DQ, right? And so that was a really interesting way to incentivize people to get the submission. Like, because you get more points for that in your standings in your division. So I think that helped a lot. It made the action really fun. Everybody got after it. Everybody got plenty of rounds. Everybody was dead afterwards because it was so hot and they got so many matches.
Yeah.
Because you got to think, if you're going in and you're doing the gi and the no gi, and you've got a full division of 5, right? And you're gonna get like 8 matches.
Right.
Like that's a long day, man. And that's a lot of experience. That's a lot of experience. And I think it went off great. And I really loved reffing a little bit. It was kind of fun to be out there and kind of just be on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. And I think it's, I try to do several things that I thought would help create a good environment, because again, the way that I looked at the tournament was, this is experience for a bigger tournament someday, right? Like someone won the Jiu-Jitsu Open. Nobody cares, right? You care about yourself. I mean, what you care about is the experience you gather from it. It's like, so one of the negatives was my fault. I got the world's smallest medals.
Yeah. Do you have it with you anywhere?
No, I don't have any with me, but basically, so here's what happened. So again, one of my positives, or one of my like superpowers, if you will, is I can jump right into things and then let's just do it and see what happens. One of my negatives is like the same thing. When I jump into things, it basically creates an environment where we got to go. And so when Jeff and I decided, hey, let's go and try to do this tournament, I think it was, what was it, like May? Something like that. It wasn't very long ago. And so we were like, okay, we got to go. And so I wanted to get custom medals. I didn't want to get like, I've got my first medal right here somewhere. Like a lot of times, like jiu-jitsu medals, these tournaments you go there and it's like a wrestling medal. There's just two guys locked up, and then it's like, you know, something, you know, the name of the tournament. Hell,
I even sticker on it or something.
Yeah. I've even got one medal where it was like, it was literally a karate. Like they're punching or whatever, and it was like the jiu-jitsu thing. I was like, this is a karate medal.
Dude, I got one of the medals I remember. This was a blue. It was like a spinner. It had like that frame, and then inside the like little thing spun. Oh my God. I was like, what is this thing? But you know, whatever. It was good. The you know, the medal that you had in theory would have probably worked better as a pin.
Yeah.
Like a shirt, like a
Yep. I know.
But dude, I think you handled it very well. I think nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared. I didn't hear one person say,
this is where I was getting
medal.
Well, and this is where I was getting. So basically, one of the negatives was that the medals were small and they weren't up to where I wanted them, because basically I just sort of trusted the people that were making it, and I was like, sure, it looks great. I mean, the actual design, I actually like the design.
It looked good.
I just want to make sure next time we put it on I wanted to make it either at 3 or 4 inches. Next time we'll just make sure it's like the whole like square, not just this little sliver. You know, I talked to a couple people and I was making a joke, and I was like, how's the tournament going for you? I remember I was doing this to one of the black belts, and he was like, man, it's been great. And he started like saying all this nice stuff about it. And I said, you know, it's not so good about this tournament. He's like, what? I was like, the medals, they're really small. And that was my fault, you know, and I start kind of messing with myself. And he was telling me, which I agree with. He's like, bro, this thing's going to go into a bag somewhere. And you know what I mean? It's not the medals you're competing for, it's your experience. Cause again, think about this way, like you could go out and get a medal. Like for instance, if you go to an IBJJF and maybe you were the only person in the division and you want to step up, and you can literally go get your participation medal, you know, or you could lose a match and get second place, right? Because there's only 2 people in the division. And if you rock that medal, it's like, it doesn't feel great. You know what I mean? It's, you know, there's no satisfaction in that. Right? It's not the medal. It's what the medal represents. So in each one of my medals, I have a memory of what it was like to achieve that medal. You know what I mean? So it's like, I know exactly what I did in that medal. Like I know what I had to do, whatever. And so again, you know, one of the negatives there was that, but again, nobody really cares at the end of the day. It's just a medal. They care about the experiences they get, and kind of going to it. That's really what I wanted to offer people, was a chance to say, hey, listen, this is not a big tournament. We've got small medals. Nobody's going to care if you want it, right? Whatever. But listen, when you do this, you're going to have a lot of experience that could lend itself to helping you win big tournaments someday. Because when I think about some of the, you know, the bigger tournaments that I've won, like the Worlds or, you know, the Nogi Pans or whatever, I look at that and I know for a fact that there were lessons that I had learned, you know, at regional tournaments that nobody's heard of, that videos are not on the internet. And, you know, they're somewhere stashed in my database in my head. They're there, but they're not anywhere else. But I'm so glad I had those experiences, because if not, I may have not won those matches later on. And so, you know, you accumulate that experience because it's important and it helps make you better long-term. And again, being able to go in and compete 8 times in a day and get some matches, that's great. Because that's going to lend itself to being more successful later on. And that was the whole focus of it.
If there's anything positive about those medals, is that it's it's a very unique medal. You're not gonna have another one like it. So it's definitely gonna stand out and you're gonna remember it. So if there's anything positive, you're gonna be like, because some of those IBJJF, it's like the only thing you can tell is a little bit of the shape and the date. Right. The year. And you're like, okay, I just don't remember that. But like this one, that's the Jiu-Jitsu Open medal.
So the medals, guys, for those of you listening, the medals are actually nice. It's all custom.
They're really nice.
It's a rectangle instead of a square. And so it's kind of small. But you know, again, it's one of those things where I wanted a custom medal, because you're right. Like there's a lot of different medals, even at big tournaments, where like they just kind of look like whatever. There's nothing to them, you know, whereas this one, like they're colored and everything else. And I think they came out great. Just have to make sure next time, got to make sure next time they get bigger.
Read the fine print, Chewy. What would you change? Is there anything you change?
The medals.
What besides that?
The medals.
Obviously the medals.
Going back to, I got way off topic before we go to this.
The
reason why the medals, I just trusted the people, and because we were on a time crunch, I had to make sure we had the medals. And so I said, sure, print them, let's get them going. And that was what happened with the medals. And that's why I didn't really have enough time to like look at them, get samples or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So sorry, I got on a tangent.
Besides the medals were cool. They're really, really cool. What would you change? Would you change anything? Because I feel like it was a success. You said probably, no expectations, but
Well, no,
what
no,
makes it
no expectations, but I still
right?
know if it's successful or not.
Exactly. Like, if it's successful, meaning like you check a couple of boxes, like we met our, occupant, like how many competitors we had. We got that. It was run. Yeah, positive, kind of comments about it. The matches went off well. Everything was pretty smooth. We had kind of all these aspects of it covered, and it was a good tournament with lots of experience. The rule set worked. What would you change?
So when I think about all the things that I wanted to have happen, right? We had a tournament where people were very aggressive. They got after it. Everybody was able to get matches in. Things were safe. Our medic was there, Mike, one of my black belts. He was
Mike was
there, and
killing it, man. He was doing awesome.
he was busy, right? He was busy that day, and we had a few things happen, and he held everything down and
Absolutely.
did an amazing job. He's really good at what he does. He's a paramedic, and the dude's like he's really good at what he does.
He does.
And so.
Yep.
He was glad to have him there. He kept everybody safe, or if they had issues, he was able to take care of them and patch them up a little bit. And so everybody got in, they got to compete, and it was safe. That's good. The biggest issue was that just the space. And so looking at it now, it's like, well, what do we do next time? Well, next time we're going to make it in a bigger venue, right? So now we have to go get one. And so this is kind of the thing. This is where I am with things. I always test things out because, again, I don't really like this is more of a business idea. I don't really like to lose a lot of money, right? So for me, it's always like a test. Let me see how this works before I like try to blow this thing up. Like, let me work with, in like tech stuff, they'll talk about the MVP, your minimum viable product, right? What is the smallest thing that you can offer people, the least, the least costly thing you can offer people, and do they want that? What is the core that you want to offer them? And if they want that, then you can always make it bigger, right? And again, we're not like a big company, so we're a small business. We don't get to do things like Uber, where you can literally operate since this quarter, they just turned a profit for the first time ever.
Oh, wow.
They've lost $32 billion, right? So trying to get the company, and it's like, it boggles my mind, but they can get capital because of, like stocks and venture capital, right? So they can just keep getting that injected. But I'm like, you've been operating at a loss since 2014. Small businesses like us, we operated at a loss for since 2014 for almost a decade. We go out of business, right? We don't get that luxury. And so with that, my whole thing is like, I want to make sure I test it, and then we can always make it bigger later on. And so I think that the next time we do one like this, I think we will do it in a venue that's bigger, that can accommodate more people, because obviously people like it. They like the format. And we'll do that whole thing. So we'll probably have more mats. We'll have, a bigger venue that can accommodate more people and accommodate more competitors, and we'll do the thing bigger. Again, if we do this format again, it's just one of those things where, because of the format and everybody's getting matches, it's just one of those things I'll have to make sure people know, because especially people that have never done a competition before, it's not going to be over in like an hour, right? You got to buckle down and be prepared for the day, because, as we all know, anybody that's a hardened, seasoned competitor, that one of the skills that you have to develop is patience.
Yep.
And being able to play the waiting game, because competitions, that's a big part of it. And knowing how to properly wait, as silly as it sounds, is important, because, if you sit around and watch all your matches, you're going to get exhausted. Like I had to tell a couple of the white belts that were on our team, I was going up to one of them, and even one of our blue belts, and she's watching the matches, and I'm like, hey, so you're watching these matches right now? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you feel like your chest is thumping a little harder? Do you feel like you're a little bit more amped up right now watching? They're like, uh-huh. I'm like, yeah, you need to go sit down, go away, go in the other room, go home for a little bit, come back, do whatever you got to do to stay relaxed for as long as possible. Because, as you're sitting there, my heart rate will start, like I've done this before, where I'll start watching a match and I'll notice my heart rate goes up, and I'll sort of read my heart rate, and it'll be at 80 beats or 85 beats, which that's not super high for most people, but like my resting heart rate sits in like the 50s or 60s. Like it's usually very low, but all of a sudden I'm like pumped up, adrenaline's flowing, and I'm watching.
Energy.
Yeah, exactly, because I know I'm going to have to be up, so I have to get away from it, and I have to go get space. Now, some people are different. But one of the things I say is like, you got to be able to, you got to get away from it, especially if it's something that you can feel your energy's amped up, because by the time you finally get to compete, especially if you're one of the lower belts who typically go last, you will be exhausted. But again, to answer your question, going back to it, the big idea is that I want to make sure it's in a bigger venue to accommodate more people and be more comfortable.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I had to have the same conversation with one of the white belts. I was like, because it was already maybe an hour before even like the meeting and stuff, and they're already kind of getting a little worked up. I'm like, look, you need to go.
You
Like,
need to
go
slow your
walk
roll.
around. Go. Don't worry about this. Don't be sitting here watching this, because it's exactly what happens. You're just like, oh no. Oh, can I do that? Then you start playing. Your mind starts playing games with you, and usually they're not good games. They're usually I don't know. For most people, some people may be like, oh, I could beat that person, or that's not.
Most people,
are going to
they're
be
playing
like
a rough
doubting.
game.
Yeah, doubting yourself. So don't worry about it. Don't need to see it. It's going to be there. Like, as long as you don't miss your match time. So if you have like, get there like maybe 15, 20 minutes before, your match time to get warmed up, make sure everything's on schedule, and being ready at the right time, meaning having your food, eat your food at the right time, or what you think is the right time, and just kind of stay relaxed and, get out of your head, because it's already, all the prep's done. There's nothing else, no more cramming that's going to help. At this point, this is what it is. This is what you're coming to this tournament with, like it or not.
So off